So today we're going to take a look at my playoff pick'em bracket for VCT Masters Copenhagen. This will almost certainly be wrong, but it's going to be interesting. I think some of the choices that I feel like I want to make are probably going to surprise some of you, but let's just take a look at how it's going to go. So first, let's start off actually with how my group stages went. I didn't do well in Group A, like most people. I think I got this one for Optic here, but actually my Group B was 100% correct, so that is pretty good, and that has led me to be in kind of the top echelon of the players overall. Whoever these 6 people are, what the hell are you doing? How the hell did you get all of that right with how many upsets there were? But crazy if you're these 6 people. But now let's dive in to my playoff bracket. And we'll start with Paper X versus Guild. And I'm actually going to surprise almost everyone, I think, because I'm going to pick Guild. The reason I'm going to pick Guild is not because I think they're the better team. I think Paper X are a better team overall, but I think stylistically, Guild match up against Paper X quite well. In that Guild play, a very controlled, slow style. And I think, we saw it with Zeta Division as well, where, Paper X struggled against them, who play a very similar style to Guild. I wouldn't be shocked if the same thing happened. Now, there is one difference in that Zeta probably have scrimmed against Paper X, right? They're both from Asia. It's very common for APAC teams and Japanese teams to scrim against each other. I'm sure they have many times. And so they probably were more familiar than Paper X than Guild will be. But of all the EMEA teams, or NA teams added into that as well, I think that Guild are the one that can make a difference. They're the one that have that kind of weird playstyle that might counter Paper X. And so I am going to pick Guild, kind of against what most of you might think. Now we come to Fnatic versus FPX, and this one, of course, we've seen already multiple times. I think Fnatic are just the better team. Even if FPX have Sugetsu, I think Fnatic are just the better team. We've seen, Fnatic used to be obviously known as a LAN team, right? That they would actually play better on LAN than they would not, and Durka is a LANimal, as many of us know. And so I do think that even though FPX, Xiao's probably been the best player at the tournament so far, I do think that Fnatic will probably take this one overall, and the FPX have been a bit reliant on Xiao and Ardis at moments as well, just kind of winning them rounds on their own. And I think that Fnatic are good enough to not let that happen overall. So I am going to go Fnatic. Then we come to Leviathan versus DRX. And unfortunately for Leviathan, I think that they got probably the hardest matchup they could have, because I think DRX have been the best team from coming from groups by far and away, honestly. I think that they've just been, better than everyone else, to be honest. I think that they've looked insane, and I have no problem picking them. And it's not really a thing against Leviathan at all. I think that they are a team that could surprise. I think that they, are a bit better than probably most people expect them to be, but I think that DRX are just a team that is on fire right now, and I think that they're just playing insanely well, and so I'm picking them. And then we come to the NA matchup, XSET versus Optic, and this one I went back and forth on a lot. I definitely could see either team winning this game. I think it's basically a coin flip. Marved obviously is playing sort of out of his mind again, as usual. Yay is starting to warm up. I don't think he's found like full Yay form. He isn't playing like the best he's ever played, but he's playing pretty well. But XSET have time to prepare. They've been able to see Optic play 3 full games. So, they have a lot of film on Optic and what they're going to do on certain maps. I think that the map overall selection will probably favor XSET. And so I'm thinking very much about picking XSET. But I also think that the Optic experience in those clutch moments, I think that this will be an extremely close game. And I think that Optic in those clutch moments will just have that experience at this kind of stage, at this kind of level, that is just going to pull them over the line. But I could easily see XSET winning this game, like very, very easily see XSET winning this game as well. But I could see it kind of being similar to the Guard, right, where that game against Optic was very close, but Optic just narrowed it out. I could see it being pretty similar to that. And so this would leave us with Paper X versus FPX and Leviathan versus XSET. Now, unlike Guild, FPX don't have that kind of same mentality, that same kind of very extreme playstyle that Guild do. And I think FPX would just be very taken off guard by Paper X. I think that they wouldn't have the discipline to do that, right? Artist would want to take fights, you know, Shao with the way he's playing probably would want to take fights. Angel, as we know, would want to take fights. And I think they'd get sucked in to the chaos, to be honest. And so I am going to go for Paper Rex winning this game, because if Paper Rex can suck you into chaos, well, you've lost, right? It's game over. You've already lost. You have to play in a kind of DRX Zeta guild fashion, I think, to actually beat Paper Rex. And I don't think FPX, even though they are a very adaptable team, they'll want to take fights, and they'll lose most of those fights, because that's how Paper Rex win their games. So I do predict that. Now Leviathan versus Xset, and I went back and forth on this as well, because I do think that Leviathan could surprise. My problem here for Leviathan is that some of their better maps, Xset might counter, like a Split, for instance. You know, Leviathan are pretty good on Split, but Xset are also pretty good on Split, so I think that they could, you know, counter that a bit. But I am going to go with Leviathan. I think that they will surprise, and I can see, you know, sometimes I just get visions in my mind of like what I can see, right? I had the one where 100 Thieves beat FaZe, but then FaZe beat them in the rematch, and I could just picture Babyface tweet. It's kind of a similar thing where I can see BCJ with his head in his hands after they lose to Leviathan. I don't know what it is, I can just see it. And so I'm picking Leviathan for no other reason than I just have this picture of BCJ with his head in his hands. And so yeah, I will go for that. Fnatic versus Guild at this point. Fnatic, I don't think, you know, would be counted by Guild in the same sort of way. They're the better team than Guild, and so I'll pick Fnatic. And then DRX versus Optic, a natural rematch. I think this game happened at the exact same stage in Iceland as well. But for me, DRX have been more impressive than Optic at this tournament so far. I think they're playing, as I said, extremely structured Valorant. I think they're playing a lot better than they were even at Iceland. They're kind of the only team that's been convincing. The only map they dropped was Shao's, honestly, maybe the best performance that we've seen this year from a single player in a game. And so I will go for DRX because I think they've just played a bit better overall. And that would leave us with Optic versus Paper X. And again, I think Optic would, in fact, I know Optic would be dragged into the Paper X fight. With the way that they've been playing, if you look at some of their maps, you know, Marv is just taking a lot of duels. Now, he's winning a lot of those duels, and he probably would win quite a lot of those duels against Paper X as well. But if that's the mindset, that you can win duels and we're going to fight them, again, you will lose. Like, you will lose to Paper X if you do that. And I think that Optic would get baited in, honestly. I think that, you know, they're just a team with a lot of confidence that feel like they could out-duel probably any team. And that's what Paper X want you to think when, you know, they suck you into those duels and then they blind you and then they kill you for free and they laugh. You know, it happened to G2 and it happened to the Guard as well. You know, they thought they could win those duels as well and they thought they were good teams. And that's how Paper X beat you. So I am going to go for Paper X, and Optic, you know, the champions would be eliminated here in round 2. But given the way Optic have played, I think that honestly kind of suits kind of the level they've been at overall, right? They've had some good maps and some very weak maps as well. So, you know, I think that probably suits where Paper X are and Optic are, to be honest. And then we'd have Guild versus Leviathan, and this would be, again, I think Guild at this point, I feel would, you know, probably be feeling themselves a bit. Sure, they lost to Fnatic. I don't think that would hurt their mental too much, right? They know Fnatic are, of course, are a very good team, so I think that they would still be feeling it. I think this game would probably be close, but I am going to go Guild in this one, in a close game. I think, you know, they've already kind of shown that they can win those close games. And so I think that could be another situation here, right? Where they just win in like an overtime, like clutch scenario, right? When it kind of looks maybe a bit shaky at times. I am going to go for Guild in that one. And then we'd have Fnatic DRX in the upper final. I think this would be an absolute banger of a game, to be honest, with the way DRX are playing. This would be an absolute joy to watch, I think, overall. But I am just going to edge Fnatic here over DRX. I think that they just have that little firepower advantage. And I'm kind of sticking with, you know, my initial predictions here for Fnatic as well, that Althea will pop off in this tournament, and we're all just living in his world and don't know it. And then we get the Paper X Guild rematch, right? But I think actually the same thing would happen again, unfortunately, for Paper X, right? Paper X wouldn't really, I don't think, necessarily adapt, right? They have their playstyle, they're going to play to it. And Guild the same. They have their playstyle, and even though it's very frustrating, and I know a lot of people get annoyed at Guild when they lose rounds on time again and again and again, they're going to stick to it. And I think against Paper X, it will just work. And so I am actually going to go for Guild in this one again, because I think that they have the stylistic difference, and you know, they would have played Paper Rex once already, and so they'll have that knowledge of what Paper Rex want to do. And so I will go for Guild over Paper Rex here in the lower round 3. And then we'd end up with a lower final of DRX versus Guild. And I'm going to be honest, I think DRX are just a better team than Guild, so I will pick DRX. I don't think that one would even necessarily be that close, to be honest. I think that DRX just are a better team overall, and unless Leo went insane, which he has been doing, to be fair, but unless he went super crazy, then I do think that DRX would have just the team structure advantage. And we'd end up with a final of Fnatic DRX, which, if Fnatic play to how they qualified, you know, they should be here, because I think that that level that they qualified with has looked a bit better than everyone else that I've seen so far at this tournament. And DRX, out of everyone I've seen so far at this tournament, have been the best team. So this would make sense that, you know, if kind of the levels stay the same for, you know, everyone, or everyone kind of plays at the level that I think that I expect them to, then I think that this final makes sense. And I think that in this final, again, I obviously had Fnatic winning the upper final. I think that this would be close. I don't think we'd get a 3-0. I think that DRX could definitely win some maps, but I do think that Fnatic, again, just have like a little firepower advantage, and you know, would just be able to win, you know, just a few more rounds than DRX, right? Like maybe Durka, you know, chamber diffs, buzz or something, like, you know, little things like that. I do think that Fnatic could take it, but this is what I've got. Now, I know it looks weird. I know that some of you are going to be saying this can't happen, this team's the favorite, but as we saw in the group stages, that doesn't matter. Loud went out straight away, right? Like, games don't go how you always expect them to, and so, you know, I think that this is a reasonable thing that could happen. But more likely than not, it definitely won't happen. So if your favorite team got eliminated very early on, probably XSET will end up winning the whole thing, to be honest, with how this has gone. So yeah, this is my predictions, but it almost certainly will be pretty wrong.